Good afternoon. I'm here today in Southall with Upkar Singh Ray, who's launching a new campaign concerning the EU. In Southall today is the Nagar Kirtan, which is the birth of the Sikh nation. It's their new year. It's celebrated every year in this period. There'll be other similar events taking place in London over the next couple of weeks or so. But as you can see, behind me is Southall Market and the main shops. Upkar is here today with leaflets in hand, with other activists talking about the EU and its new campaign. What's the campaign called, Upkar?
Thank you, Graham. The campaign itself is called Global Markets, Free Nations. We as the National Liberal Party are fully supporting it. There are many other organisations who have joined it. Friends Party are on board, the Libertarians, Nations Without States, and many, many more. My primary objective is to educate our community. We're here, 100,000 people come out to this Nagar Kirtan every year, and we always come out to make people aware of what's happening to their lives and how they're being affected. And the Leave EU campaign is one of the biggest decisions as a community this community will face. Not just Sikhs, but many diverse communities. Speaking to a young mother, I asked a question today about how she feels as to the future of her child, and she's worried. She said, degrees don't mean nothing now. We get degrees, we don't get the wages. Her sisters who have just done degrees and gone to jobs, they're not earning the money for the debt they've picked up to go through those degrees. At the same time, the general wage market for the working class who aren't educated, that wage market is completely suppressed because the Europeans have come across and they've actually made a lot of cheap labour. That cheap labour is affecting many diverse communities. People who've come from the Commonwealth countries, people who've come from outside the Commonwealth countries. There isn't a single community that's not affected. And what really annoys a lot of people is that they've put their lives, hearts and souls into building businesses, properties and a way of life. They've assimilated into British culture, yet today they're the biggest victims of the European market, and the government continues to lie to them. Day in, day out, you see information on the media, which is basically saying, it'll be a complete disaster to leave the EU. Yet, one of the biggest questions posed to me by one of the parents was, since the 1970s, my sons aren't educated. They're working hard. They're working hard to pay for the bills. They haven't really had a pay rise, and the mortgages they're paying. The mortgage is getting bigger and bigger. The interest, there might not be much interest at the moment, but that doesn't mean they're not suffering.
What do you think about the EU charging us up to £55 million a day?
Well, that's an interesting question, because I just spoke to a parent who said that, I think he mentioned 23,000, it's quite accurate on that we actually are out of our pockets every day by 23 million a day. 23 million a day builds a hospital every day. Another 23 funds the staff in that hospital for a whole year. Another 23 million will fund all the social services, the infrastructure, the support required by the community. People who are suffering from depressions, from mental illness, from you name it, these are all the cuts that the governments have introduced. So 23 million a day goes a long way.
Well, clearly Europe uses that £23 million a day net. Of course, we give £55 million a day. Once they've taken away a rebate, a small rebate we get back, and once, of course, they spend money in Britain, which of course we should be spending, we should decide how it's spent, but £23 million a day apparently is what we lose totally, and it's given over to other European countries, such as the poorer ones in Eastern Europe, because they're trying to create a United States of Europe as if we're all one big family. Well, of course we're not. We speak different languages, different cultures, different histories, different systems, and Europe is of course trying to force us all to be one part of this so-called family, which many of us don't want to be. So you've called yourself Global Markets, Free Nations. Can you explain what you mean by global markets first?
Quite simply, as England has committed itself to 5,000 million people, as a trading bloc, but we've ignored 500 million. We've ignored 6,000 million globally. That's a huge market. We look at China, we look at India, which are great, huge markets. The only time we do business with them is if the EU allows us to do it. We have to go through Europe. Why should we have to ask the European Parliament and Brussels as to whether we can make any deals with any other country? How are we free as a nation? We're not. We've been restricted in any form and every form everywhere.
Well, of course, we're the fifth largest economy in the world.
We are the fifth, exactly.
We should be in control, not the other way around.
Yeah, and the greatest fact of all is the people on the street are fully aware, when you talk to them, that the 23 million that we could actually spend on our own community, there's the 27 plus that goes to the countries who we support, and then there's more countries coming into the European market who actually economically very weak, and not to mention security is a massive issue, and all those countries have massive security loopholes. In fact, you take one example of oil being sold by ISIS, it comes through Turkey. It's piped through Turkey's pipelines.
Well, of course, Turkey now is trying to get back into the EU, which has been trying to get into for many years now. And it seems as part of their migrant deal, they're going to get a visa-free travel throughout Europe. I don't believe it will include the UK for today, but ultimately, if they get citizenship in any other European country, of course, eventually Turkish workers will want to work all over Europe. So it seems like there's a never-ending supply of cheap labour, which big business is happy with. But that's not good for ordinary people, is it?
It's not good for ordinary people, and ordinary people will suffer. I mean, we've seen the last year and the mass exodus of people on our borders and in Calais, and they're not mentioning the thousands who've got through illegally through the tunnel or by boat, who've ended up on our beaches and are in our system already. And then we've got agreements being drafted by the EU to bring in more people on the pretext that we're actually throwing people out. Another thing that's happened that people are quite annoyed about is the students who came from a lot of these Commonwealth countries, some 40,000 have just won a case who were actually thrown out of the country illegally. They're going to be coming back. Yeah, and there's many more that are waiting to come through those gates. We need to shut the gates of our country to anybody come from the outside and control that immigration and stabilise the wage market.
Could I ask you about the other part of your campaign, free nations? What do you believe is a free nation?
A free nation is a nation that can make its own decision and pass its own laws. And today, as part of the EU, we're not able to do that. In fact, our hands are tied. There isn't a single piece of law we can pass. And there are many laws that are actually imposed on us as Britons, which are actually counterproductive to our own community.
It's about 60% of all our laws now are effectively from an EU edict or an EU law.
These are the laws you know about. There's many more that are being implemented on us, and there are many rights within the EU which are being taken away from us. Civil liberties that are being destroyed as part of the EU structure because it suits the whole of the EU to have it that way. We as Britons are losing ground. We gave the world democracy. We showed them what democracy is. And today, Britain is losing, and the people of Britain are losing their own democracy.
Thank you very much, Upgar. Obviously, we'll leave you now to distribute the campaign's leaflets. I believe there'll be many other social media activities going on over the next few weeks up to June the 23rd. So obviously we wish you well and hope that ultimately we'll get a vote leave the EU on the 23rd of June.
And one last word. We are here for you, the people of this country. We're here for the future of your children. Your parents have seen the last 30 years since the 70s how we've degraded as a country. So trust your parents, trust your elders. Don't listen to the media. The media is selling a whole lot of lies and campaigning against leaving the EU because they have their vested interest. It's about you and your children and their future. Thank you very much.
Vote leave.
Thank you, Graham. Vote leave.